Hello everyone. So it's nice to be back, with my second live stream, and yeah, glad that everyone's here. So I guess we can start right now. So hopefully the microphone issue has been resolved. If anything, let me know. So hopefully all of you who are here on the live stream can hear me clearly. So today's topic, as mentioned, so today we will be coding a trading bot in Python on Interactive Brokers TWS. And so what we've prepared today is basically just live coding. I will show you how to work with the TWS API documentation. And we have our TWS account ready. And also we have our PyCharm ID where we'll be writing our trading bot. So what I've prepared here is a quick information sheet with today's task that we want to accomplish. And so if you want to check out the tasks yourself, you can just click on the link in the descriptions and you will also have access to this file. So let's go through this file. And so I'll explain what we'll be doing today. So we will be working mainly with the TWS API documentation in Python. So I will teach you how to work with this documentation. And here are the individual tasks that we will want to accomplish. So first task that we're going to accomplish is we're going to extract account data from our TWS account. So we'll extract things such as account balance, account equity, and free margins. Then we will extract the portfolio data. So we'll be checking what our current exposure is in our current portfolio. So basically just requesting open trades. And then we'll go through requesting real-time market data, so we can check what the price of current market data is. We'll also request historical data to compute technical indicators, and then using that historical data we will also try to visualize an indicator such as Bollinger Bands. And then our last, or the main topic of today's live stream, is that we want to run a train bot that will open and close trades after some time delay. And so we'll see how how fast we'll progress during today's live stream, because if we are fast enough, maybe we'll have some time to also code a trading bot that will use a mean reversion strategy using Bollinger Bands. And then in the next live stream, and this will definitely be the next live stream, we will also be coding a statistical arbitrage trading bot in TWS. So this is our task for today, and let's see how we progress. And before we jump into coding, I just have a quick update for my members. So by the way, if you are subscribed to my membership, there is a member-only chat room on my Discord server available. So if you don't know about it yet, you can just send an email with your Discord username, and then I will add you to the group. And then if you have also some suggestions for the topics, for example, if you want to learn something about risk management, about trading psychology, or some coding related questions, you can just send me a request on Discord, and I will then add it into the next live stream topic. And if you're new to the channel, you can also check out some information about the membership. So I added a link here. So one last thing, so about ATJ research. So if you are interested in algorithmic trading education, you can visit atjresearch.com, and there you will find a free beginner course on algorithmic trading on MT5. And besides that, I have a statistical arbitrage trading course on MT5 as well. And also last update, I'm also working on an algorithmic trading course on IBKR TWS, which should be out by the end of this month. All right, so this is it for today's task introduction. So now let's start coding. Okay, and by the way, guys, if you have any questions, right, regarding some coding related questions that I'm going to show you right now, just let me know in the chat and I'll answer them. So let's start with our PyCharm IDE, and let me just explain what I have prepared for you here. So what we have here is our train bot file. So let me just close the things that we are not using right now. And here, this is a simple template from the TWS API documentation to connect to our TWS platform. So here we have our TWS account. This is a demo account where we are going to write our train bot, and we're going to extract data from this account. And so maybe a different approach that I'm going to present today is that we're going to focus on the documentation mainly. So I will teach you how to read every section of documentation so you can implement it yourself. Because another way I can teach you how to work with TWS API is that I have my own implementation of TWS API. So this is like collection of functions that help you interact with TWS API. But this implementation that I wrote is around, how long? 390 lines of code. So instead of just giving the code, what I'm going to do is I'm going to think, implement it using the documentation mainly, and I will try to use as little code that I've written before, so as least as possible. So let's start with explaining what we have here. So when we want to write a trading bot in TWS, what we're using is the IB API Python package. So this is imported here. And then we're going to use some other libraries such as datetime, time threading, pandas, and plotly, which you will then find throughout this live stream. So to create our TWS API client, we are here creating our class trade app, which contains the eWrapper and eClient classes from IB API. And here we are just defining the initialization of this class. And then to connect to TWS, what you need to provide is the login credentials, such as host, port, client ID, and the account of our TWS account. And then we just initialize the traded class. Then using tradeapp.connect, you just add in the host, port, client ID to connect to TWS, and then you run this client inside a thread. So let me just run this Python file to show you how to connect to TWS. And here you can see that by running a script, we are successfully connecting to our TWS account. 1 second, I just need to check one quick message. All right, everything's fine. I just have some trades open, so I'm just checking if there is something important going on. So back to the topic, we are now connected to TWS. But this is all that our app is doing right now. So what we want to do is, let's open our task again. Let's start with task number 1. So our task number 1 is to extract account data, right? Account balance, equity, and free margin. So to do that, let's check in the documentation, how to do that. So you open this documentation page and then just scroll through this overview. Let me zoom that in for you so you can see better how to do that. And so here to extract the account and portfolio data, here you will find, for example, the section account summary. So what we have here is that the eClient class can request, so it is basically sending a request to TWS to send us some data from the TWS platform, such as request account summary. And if you read this documentation, what this is doing is it will return some summary of the account. And so this request will just request the account summary as a one-time request. But if you want to receive like real-time updates, then you can check out the second section, which is requesting account updates, right? So now how do we implement that in our application, right? If we want to request some data. And here you do have some code example, right? So what you have to do here is first you have to request some data. So basically you just tell TWS, hey, I want data from this account. So I just copy the code. And so here, while the app thread is starting, I can write trade app dot, and I can request the account updates for an account that I want to receive the account data, right? So here in my case, my account or the TWS account is this text here. So this is my account. So to request the data, I use trade app dot request account updates. I will add a sleep function to request that, and after that, we should be able to receive the data from IBKR. So I'm going to restart the TradingBot again. Now I request account update, and here by setting subscribe to true, basically I'm trying to subscribe to real-time data. So now that I have requested the account updates, now the question is, how do we read the data? How do we access it from our trade app class? And so in order to receive data, we can just scroll down, and here we have something called eWrapper, right? So eWrapper is a class in TWS API that will handle the incoming messages. And then to actually receive the incoming message, we have to implement this function, update account value, for example, or update portfolio, which will give us updates on the account. And to implement that, we just have to add another method inside our TradeUp class. So here we see that now I have defined update account value. And now the callback of this is, so whenever we receive new updates on the account value, we'll print the incoming data, and then we can process it however we want to. So let me try to restart TradingBot again, and hopefully, yeah, so now you see that now that after I've added this function, I now receive data from TWS. So for example, here I have some account value with, for example, the account code, right, is this account number. And also, for example, if I want to know the cash balance, which is the account balance, you can find here, which is the cash balance here is this amount. And as you can see, I have the values in multiple currencies. So now in order to now proceed to saving the account balance, account equity, free margin, and so on, what we can do is we can save this value inside the variable. Unfortunate, I'm very sorry again. So now it should be fixed again. I realize it's something with my PC disconnecting again. So let me continue with the update account value. So actually right now, the only fix with my microphone is to pull it out and pull it back. So hopefully, yeah. Thanks for understanding. Okay, so now it should be fixed again. And let's continue with the update account value. So the base currency here is actually taking all the currencies and then displaying the sum of all currencies in my base, in which case I trade in euro. So here the base currency is euro. So what I can do here is, as I said, we can save the account balance. So if, let's say so our currency is equal, for example, to base, and then we want to save this cash balance value, which is our key. And so if our key is equal to cash balance, then we will save this value here inside self.account balance, and now we'll get the account balance, right? So now self.account balance is equal to this value, right? So now I'm just saving some value that I get from TWS. And so now let me run this again. And to check if this works, I'm just going to add the print statement in this section here, right? Just to make sure that we are just printing this single value here. So now I see that this condition is true. So whenever we check for this condition, we save our account balance. And so now what we can do is, let me just comment out this print statement here. And now if I want to check periodically what the account balance is, I can go into this while loop. As you can see, I have a while loop here where I can just print every second a certain value. So let me, for example, print the account balance, right? So account balance is our trade app dot account balance. So this is the attribute or the variable that we've defined here in our trade app class. And every time we receive a new value, this value will be updated. So now let me run this. And now you see that we have this account balance being printed every second. So just one thing that I'm going to adjust, because I don't need the precision rounding to 4 decimal places, I'm just going to round this to 2 decimal places. And so now after saving this value, now we should see that the account balance will be rounded to 2 decimals. All right, it seems that this value is a string, as you can see. So here update account value is a string. So what I have to do first actually is I have to convert value into a float. So this is a mistake on my part. And after we convert this to a number, then we can apply the round. So hopefully this is the solution. So now restart the app again. And now you can see that this is our account balance, right? So the account balance changes over time. If we, for example, open or close a position, we should see a change in this value. So for example, I'm gonna close this position GS that is open right now. So I'm just going to send a market order. So now I did transmit that, and hopefully now if we check the trading bot, so what you see here is that before I close the position, we had an account balance of 99 or 997,000. And after I close the position, now the account balance is how much? Over $1 million. Omar has a question. Before you start your trades at market open, do you pick the stock and play and run your algo, or let it run automatically in the background? One second, I'm just thinking about a question. All right, so what I do is I pick my stocks so I run an analysis, I pick the stocks, and then I decide to run it automatically later. Um, so by the way, guys, if the question is currently not related to what I'm actually presenting to you right now, then I would actually propose to keep that question until end of the session, and then we can have some Q&A session if that's okay with you. All right, so I would just proceed with that. And if there are any questions, I will probably just write them down. If there's any time, I will reply to them later. So yeah, thanks. Okay, so now we solved the issue with the account balance. And so now we just complete a task on the account balance here. So now how do we get account equity and how do we get the free margin on that account? So here what you can see is we have, if you look at the data in TWS, here we have cash, we have net liquidation value and so on. So all of these values will be important, for our trading bot. And so we can just run this print statement here again. I'm just going to exit the script after print spit. Oh, actually I can do that here because there are multiple values coming in a sequence. So let me run this, and here we stop this. You will find all the values that you can actually save and work with. And so what we need is now the account equity. So the equity is basically just the sum of closed positions and unrealized positions. And I think in IBKR, it's called net liquidation value. So we have to scroll down here. So here you can see the net liquidation value. And I want the net liquidation by currency with the base amount. So this will convert all my currencies into euro because my base currency is in euro, and it will save that amount, which will contain the net liquidation amount or just equity. So again, I can add another condition here. So I can add another else if statement. So else if key is equal to, and now I can just copy this part here. So if net liquidation by currency, and in this case it's only filtered by base. So if this condition is true, I'm just going to save this value here. But before that, I need to create a new variable, self.account equity. And so with self.account equity, what I can do is, well, first I will set to none during initialization. And if I get some value from update account value, I will save it as self.account equity is equal to, again, convert that value to a float, and then we round by 2. And now if I run this script again, and I print this, so here, let's print the account equity. And now I run this. So now you see that we are printing the account equity every second, right? And so hopefully we get some updates on the P&L. So this account value should update real time. And if not, then I will have to investigate why that is. So here we have some unrealized P&L. So if this value changes, this unrealized P&L, then our net liquidation should also update. Sigma Kelly just greet everyone. Hi, thanks for joining the stream. So right now the account equity does not update, probably because maybe TWS is a bit delayed. Let me try to open a position and see if that helps, because here the position is very small. So here I'm just going to, let's say, just open 100 stocks on Goldman Sachs, and hopefully. All right, so now the order has been filled. Hopefully that will now update our account equity. So our account 100, 1,000, 219. And it does seem it's correct, because here we still have the net liquidation value from IBKR, and it is this value. So I'm going to assume that this is correct, and let's just proceed. Because what IBKR does is occasionally, like when you open a position, the portfolio or the account values do not update until, for example, open or close a position. And I believe that they provide like an update every minute or every 3 minutes or so. So we'll just check it and see how the position develops. Right, Sigma could ask a question: do you think Bloomberg terminal can be used for status arbitrage, getting better data than TWS? Oh, so the data feed provider that I use is Data Bento, right? So if you want to check that out, this is what I use for statistical arbitrage. Data Bento, yeah, that's what it's called. Okay, so now that we have the account equity that we're saving, let's also try to now add the free margin. So now if I restart it again, so in order to get the free margin, I believe that free margin is called excess liquidity. So this is basically the available funds that you can use to open positions. So here I'm going to do the same thing. So I need the excess liquidity, or let's check here. Yes, this is the excess liquidity, and this is what I can use to get the free margin. So I'm just going to search by keyword, and I need to find the excess liquidity where the currency is base, I assume. Because in this case, I only have excess liquidity in the euro currency. And here we have the maintenance margin. So just let me think about what value that is, because we have a lot to choose from here. So as you can see, Interactive Brokers offers a lot of values that we can use here. Or I'm just going to cut it short because I actually have it saved in my own implementation. So here we have cash balance, and here we call it's just excess liquidity. And here we don't have the base. All right, guys. Again, I'm very sorry. I disconnected again, so hopefully we won't have to do it very often. But let's continue. Are you using native API or the other one? I'm using the native API. So here the excess liquidity is equal to this value here, right? And now I can print excess liquidity. And then we can just print that value that we have saved up here. Okay. And now you can see that here these values should reflect what we see here in TWS. So for example, if you check the platform here, right? So when we look at the account balance, so let me open this field here. So our account balance is 942,000, right? So this is our cash balance here. And the account equity, which is this value here, you can find that this should be the net liquidation value, 1012117. So this value is actually a bit delayed. And here the excess liquidity is 99,901,169. So here we have our excess liquidity, 991,169. Oh, of course, guys, right now we have positions open, right? So the value does update real time. So this value that I have here might not be different slightly from this here, but you see that we are extracting data from TWS here. So now I would mark like this task as done. And as you can see, right, like learning with TWS API can be like a lot of work, right? Because right now we've just done this. And now in order to extract the portfolio data, we will need, to add another callback function and then save that in our trade app. And we'll do that for all of the data here. So the process here is actually the same. But once we are able to extract the data and save that in our trade app class, then the writing of the trading bot is actually very easy, because then we have all the data that we need to actually work with. So in order to extract portfolio data, what you have to do, so portfolio data is extracting open trades from TWS, which is, for example, this and this line here. And now, like, using the same procedure and process, we can now just request the portfolio update. So here we have, for example, eWrapper update portfolio. And because we subscribe to the account updates already, this value should already come. We should already be receiving data. That's what I'm trying to say. So whenever you call again request account updates, this will request data from TWS, and you will receive account data from update account value, and you will also receive data from update portfolio. So now, because our account section is done, I will just comment this out, because we don't need that anymore, basically. And so now let's just print the data from update portfolio. So hopefully this print statement should be running, because we are already requesting the portfolio data. So now what you can see here is whenever we run update portfolio, it returned 2 lines, right? So the first line is returning the trade from Goldman Sachs that is now open. And the second line here is data from Morgan Stanley, right? Which is MS. So what you can do here is, right, we just save that inside a dictionary, and then we can request the portfolio updates from our trade app. And now, because I just explained the process, right, we just send a request to TWS, and then we retrieve the data using this callback function. I'm now actually just going to copy the implementation of my TWS client. So this is again the class I've written myself. So instead of like writing it from scratch, here what you can see is that I have my own implementation of update portfolio where I'm just saving the data inside the dictionary, right? So I'm just going to copy that. So here inside update portfolio, if I save this inside this dictionary, I will then have access to this data as a dictionary, right? So here first I need to create a new variable for portfolio data. So here these variables refer to my account. So is the account data. And here I will just create a variable called portfolio, and I will set this to an empty dictionary. And now by running this, hopefully this should not create any error. So whenever we receive an update from TWS or the trade app from update portfolio, the data we receive will be saved inside a dictionary. And then we want to query this data. All right, very sorry about that. I know it's getting very annoying. I will try to fix that as soon as possible with the microphone, right? So yeah, I'll work on that. So hopefully you can hear me again, guys. And so what I've tried to say is that here you have the portfolio data. So now I have data for all open positions, right? And so if I want to, maybe display it in a nicer way, what you could, for example, also do is you can convert this portfolio into pandas data frame. This is something what I like to do when I do data analysis. So here I can, for example, write portfolio df is equal to pandas.data frame. So we basically converted this dictionary into a data frame. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So instead of showing you a dictionary, I'm converting the data into a data frame and then showing that to you as a data frame, basically. Right? So here what you see here is not like a nicer table of our portfolio. So this is, I just want to also add the parametric orient index. So we're setting the key as the indices of our trade app. Right? And here we have the line. So here we have the trade on Goldman Sachs, right? So right now our position on Goldman Sachs is 100 stocks long. And then we have some other data such as, average cost, unrealized P&L and realized P&L and so on. And for Morgan Stanley, we also have the same row here. So the data that you see here, you can see that right here. So another optimization you can make is like the conversion from dictionaries to data frames can be costly. What you can do instead, for example, is if you prefer working data frames. So instead of saving the portfolio inside dictionary, you can also save it directly as a data frame, right? So instead of like saying dictionary, you can then set, for example, pandas.data frame. And then let's see the columns that we're using. So here we see that these are columns such as the local symbol, market price, market value, average cost, and so on. So let me just show you an example because I guess a lot of you guys actually prefer data frames. And when it comes to data analysis, like requesting manipulated data, this can also be a big advantage. And that's why I'm actually teaching the native API, because by using the native API, you have so much freedom in customization based on your own requirements, right? So here we want to save the data directly inside a data frame. So what you have to do here is I'm actually going to copy the line here, so I have to scroll down, and these are basically our columns. So I can save the position. So position is basically just the volume. I can save the current market price. And of course, the portfolio data also returns much more than this, right? This is just the things I decided to save. When you want to save other things, right? All these lines here are actually available from the portfolio. So here we can save market value. You can save the average cost, the unrealized P&L, and also the realized P&L. So now instead of saving that inside a dictionary, what you can do is now, and I'm going to call it portfolio DF now, because it is actually data frame. So when we get the data in update portfolio, so instead of saving in the dictionary, we can say that this portfolio DF with this index is equal to the list of items here that we want to save. So I'm now going to save the list of items here. So we want to save the position, the market price, and so on. So right now I'm just basically adding a row inside my data frame. So here is the average cost, the unrealized P&L, and then the realized P&L. So now let's try that, and hopefully it works. If it doesn't, then we just, have to check why it doesn't work. And so now let's run this again. So now, because we are already working with the data frame as default, so instead of converting the dictionary to data frame, let's just print the data frame, right? So now we can see that if we're trying to save in the data frame, but I see that I made a mistake here because I'm referring to self, right? So I need to save it inside this variable. So hopefully, let's try again. And hopefully that will not cause any error right now. All right, so now we see that we are actually saving values inside data frame, but I believe that there is some error with the indices. So let me just modify the script a little bit. So this is I believe I should use locate. As you can see, I can also get rusty with coding over time, but eventually it should be fine. Right, so now using log, now we save this value inside the index, and now every time we get new value, we save that value inside a data frame. So this is just an example now that if you prefer data frames and prefer doing some data analysis, then this is how you would do that. Okay, so now our portfolio is done. Let's also see if our portfolio data updates real time, right? So right now we have 100 stocks open on Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley. So now what I'm interested in, and I think I can also comment out this print statement. So now I remove this print statement. All right. So now let's see if closing a position here will cause the data to update, right? So for example, right now I have -4 stocks basically I'm 4 stocks short on Morgan Stanley. You can see that here it's -4 here. And let me now try to close this position. Okay. So I'm just going to click on market order and then I close it. And now we see that our portfolio updated. So now my position is 0, and also my position on Morgan Stanley is also 0, right? So you see that whenever we close a position, TWS sends an event that the position has been closed, and we have the portfolio real time. Let me also try to close Goldman Sachs. So here, let's close this position with a market order. And so now you see again, the position on Goldman Sachs is 0. So now we successfully implemented the update portfolio. So now if we check this task, this is also done, right? Okay, so 2 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tasks are done. So let's just proceed, with the next task. And now the next question is, how do we get real-time market data, right? Let's say I want to trade some stock or Forex or whatever. I want to know what the current market price is. So again, if you don't know, we go to our documentation page. And we go to market data live, right? So I want to know the current bid and ask price for any symbol that I want to analyze. So if we scroll down to top of book L1, so what top of book L1 does is it will request the bid and ask prices, right? So to get the bid and ask price, you can request market data here. So you, for example, write eclient dot request market data, and here you would have to specify the contract for which you want to request that data. So I'm going to copy it to my clipboard, and I'm going to stop this now. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to separate this line here so we can separate the account data. And so next thing that we want to print here is market data. So what you have to do in TWS is you have to request the market data beforehand. So here I'm requesting account updates, for example. And what I can also do, so here and so what I can do here is I can also request market data. And so today what I've shown you is I've shown you some example of Goldman Sachs. So let's just stick with this symbol, for example. Let's say hello, yeah. So microphone is back again. I guess it has something to do with Logitech G Hub. I'll check that. So yeah, we're back with the microphone. What I said is that let's request real-time market data on Goldman Sachs. Okay. So in order to request the market data, here we have the code that we've copied from the official documentation page. And as you can see here, you are required to submit a request ID and some contract. And here self is referring to our trade app that we're using. So here request ID, it's just a unique identifier to actually, check where the request came from, right? So if I for instance say the request ID is 1, then I can then match this request ID with the callback function that I have and then process it accordingly. This is useful if you have, for example, multiple symbols, like you want to request market data for 10, 20, 100 symbols, and all these request IDs will be assigned integer. And that way you can then map what the request ID, maps to which symbol. But because we're just showing an example on a single symbol, let's just set the request ID to 1. And now we have to solve the issue with a contract. So how do you define contracts in TWS? So contract is basically just a representation of a symbol in our platform. And every contract, if we look at the description, right, in TWS, every contract here has these descriptive values. So for example, which exchange is trading at, what's the symbol, and the contract ID. And in TWS, the fastest and easiest way to define a contract is to just specify the contract ID, which is a unique number, and then specify which exchange, right? And in most cases, you can use smart. So IBKR or Interactive Brokers will then handle which exchange it's coming from for you, or we can just specify that I want this contract specifically for New York Stock Exchange, for example, which is the nice here. And so I usually use smart. And so let's first define a contract so we can request the market data. So this is our current task right now. And so to request the market data, we first need to define a contract. And you see that in the documentation, you will find the contract here. So here you will find the contract object. And here, to define a contract, what you need to provide is one of these parameters. And as I said, if you just provide a contract ID and the exchange, IBKR will then automatically, will definitely know which contract you are referring to. So now we wanted to define the Goldman Sachs contract, right? So the GS contract in this case is equal to contract. So this contract class is imported from IBAPI.contract, and here we can pass in the parameters to define this contract basically, right? And as I've mentioned, here you have things that you provide such as contract ID and exchange, and this is what I'm going to do. So here contract, I think it's con ID is equal to this contract ID here. Or actually, I'm sorry, this is not how to define a contract in IBKR. You first create this contract class, and then here .con ID is equal to this value here. And then the exchange is equal to, and as I mentioned, it is, I use smart for stocks, and that is a string. So now if I request the market data, now TWS should be sending the market data to me, and then I can process again and do whatever I want with it. So now if I run this app again, I'm just checking if there's no error with define a contract, and right, I'm requesting market data here. So let's now see how I can retrieve the market data using IBAPI. So now to receive the market data, remember we went to market data live. And then here on top of book, we used eClient request market data. Again, to process data, we need to use the eWrapper class. And we scroll a bit lower. You will have eWrapper tick generic, eWrapper tick price, and tick size, and so on. right? So here you can basically copy this code and add it in your trade app class to process our tick data. But what I'm just interested in mainly right now is just a tick price. As you can see, you can have the tick size, so that will return the volume. So whenever you like trade, right, you have like you have this depth of market where you have certain amount of you know, volume for each bid and ask. But now I'm just interested in a tick price. So what I'm going to do is, so I copy this code, and here again in our TradeUp class, we're adding another callback function that will handle the processing of our prices. So now let's again just run this. And hopefully this line here will print out the request ID, the tick type, and the prices, right? And here you can see that we have this request ID implemented. But we should still see some live market data. So let me check that. I implemented that. So here in tick price, we are saving the data here. Okay. So first thing that I want to check is how the market data looks in TWS. So here, for example, what you see is, so I'm just going to explain what we're actually extracting. So we're extracting the bid price here, and we're also trying to extract the ask price here. So 794 is the bid and 795 is the ask. And then you see the bid size and ask size. So this is basically the size of our tick. And so this is actually what we're trying to query. So one thing I have to check is that I think if I made a mistake the way I requested the market data. I guess that should be fine. So now, like, maybe to save time, because I guess maybe we're a bit slow. After you request the market data, what you will get is the tick prices, you will get the tick size, and so what I have here is already prepared a function that will process and handle the incoming market data that we'll receive. So what we're doing here is we are saving the ticks that are coming in from TWS, and then we're saving it in our market data dictionary. And because we haven't created a dictionary yet, what we can do is we can save the data inside the market watch. So here in this section, we are using the market data. So self.marketData is equal to our dictionary. And then whenever we receive some value from tick price or tick size, we will then save it. What you can also see is that I'm using something called request market map, right? Because if you remember, when we request market data, we provide a request ID here, right? Which is 1. But whenever we receive a price from the tick, how do you know that 1 represents Goldman Sachs, right? Because, for example, I can have multiple symbols that I want to trade. And so how we solve that is we just create this dictionary that will map a number to the symbol that I want to trade. Sorry about that. So here we have this request market map. And So how this market map works, and now we're going to work a little bit more with my own implementation of TWS API. So here we have this request market map that we're using. And so when we request the data, right, and let me scroll to an example down here. 1 second. Actually, even lower. So whenever we create a contract and then we request the market data, within our process ticks, we are creating the mapping ourselves, right? So as you can see, the bot request market data, which is a wrapper class, we are actually mapping the things ourselves. And sorry for being confusing right now, because this is something I implement myself. I'm just actually trying to help me going through a process, because sometimes I forgot how I wrote the things myself. So I'm going to make this a bit easier, right, for myself, because now when I request market data, and this is number 1, so I'm just going to create a very simple dictionary here, right? So I'm just going to create a very simple logic, or I'm actually going to create my own dictionary actually. So I'm going to create a market data request map, and this is going to be a dictionary. And so when the request ID is 1, I am now referencing our Goldman Sachs contract, right? So I can, for example, say 1 represents GS. And for example, if I want to request market data for another symbol, and here I would, for example, say Morgan Stanley, I can map that to number 2. So here in this example, if I want to retrieve data for more than one symbol, such as Morgan Stanley, so I would need to define a second contract, right? So here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a second contract, such as Morgan Stanley, which is the MS contract. And of course, this Morgan Stanley contract has a different contract ID. And to check that contract ID, I can check in descriptions. And here Morgan Stanley has a contract ID with this value. And so now if I just change this contract ID, now I can request market data for a second contract. And now let me just try to run the script again. So now this is just an example how you can request multiple contracts at the same time. Of course, we had some error because I still did not implement this tick price and tick size successfully, because right now this contract map is not yet available, right? So here in this case, our symbol is equal to this market data request map. And all it does is that whenever we receive an updated tick price with this request ID, it will then return the symbol that we're retrieving. So if we receive 1, it's Goldman Sachs. If we receive 2, it's Morgan Stanley. Are you using demo account? Yes, I'm using demo account right now. And I recommend everyone who's starting out with algorithmic trading or learning TWS API to use a demo. So here in this case, I'm just going to update the code here that I just copied. And now let me explain exactly how every function works here. So Bagger is asking questions. Thank you for the effort first. Second, I want to ask, do we can put full code in one file? If not, why? Well, certainly if you can code this entire thing in one file, that is doable, right? Because right now, for example, I am coding everything in one file, but sometimes the projects can get like very long, right? You can have hundreds or even thousands lines of code. And at that point, it can be very confusing to work with. So in these cases, I would recommend like to separate the files and to have more organized structure. But if it's just like a very simple trading bot, it just does one thing, and for example the code is, let's say, below 300 or 500 lines of code, then I think it's acceptable to use a single Python file. But it's of course up to personal preference, and if you can actually organize yourself using large Python files. Okay, so now let me just explain what tick price does. So whenever we receive a tick event from TWS, it will give us, if the tick type is 1, that represents the bid price. If tick type is 2, that represents the ask price. And if tick type is 4, that would represent the last price, right? And here in the tick size section, it does the same thing, but it just checks the size of that tick. So how much volume is available for this bid and ask price. Of course, we also forgot to do one thing, and that is that this market data symbol is also a dictionary. So before we actually before we can actually save data, so inside trade app, we need to create the dictionary, like the dictionary, so we can save the data there first. So here in trade app.market data, so when we save it inside this key, for example, Goldman Sachs, we will initialize an empty dictionary, right? And by the way, so what I'm doing here is that I'm creating this like data holder for my dictionaries. In my own implementation of the TWS client, this is done automatically on the back end, but I'm doing this in front of you guys so you understand what's the process behind it. And then eventually, once you learn like the basic concept of TWS API, when you start working with this class that I've implemented, you will exactly know what this code is doing, right? So I'm really trying to teach the very basic concepts of TWS API, and that's why we are doing it like this. So hopefully, let's run the string bot, and I hope that there will be no errors. So we're connecting, and now we see that we have no error, right? So hopefully what's happening right now is we requested the market data for Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, and we can print that data because it's now being saved in our market watch. So now what I can do is I can go to the market data section here, and I can print trade app dot market data. Let me also like do a small separation here so we can distinguish the section here. And hopefully when we check the market data, we should then have, see the prices for Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs. So now what you see here is that the script is working, because if I stop the script right here, you see that here we have the dictionary with the market data. So Goldman Sachs current bid is 793. And Goldman Sachs ask is 794. And if I want to check the Morgan Stanley data, right, here with the key MS, here is the bid price 165, and here the ask price is also 165.53. So yeah, so now we've completed an error section, and so 3 out of 6 tasks are now done, right? So yeah, let me take a small break and sip, because actually we've been streaming for 1 hour already. So hopefully guys, you are not too confused, but again, I will upload the code for everyone so you can like study it yourself. But what I'm trying to say is that what I'm doing right now is I'm going into the documentation. I just copy the code that I need, then I implement it into my trade app, and one by one, we are building our application. And so by the time we finish all these things here, right? Then coding the app is simple because then the process of creating trading bot is always the same, right? You just need to implement the last two functions here, and then based on that, we can write our trading logic for the trading bot. Okay, so now let's proceed to requesting historical data. Right, historical data means the open, high, low, close candles, so you can see this chart here. So how do we extract that? And also we can add like a visualization of this OHLC chart, right? And again, the process is, let's go to documentation and let's now look at the market data historical. So here we have the historical market data. So you can also read like through the details here, but in order to request the historical market data, I think we should go to historical bars, and here you can see eClient request historical data. So let's say I want to request historical data for Morgan Stanley. So now here, let's create a new section, request historical data. And so what we do in this section is that we use trade app dot request historical data. And again, here this historical data has its own request ID, right? And here, because we are requesting two different things, I can, for example, again say request ID is, for example, 1, and this one will again map to my Goldman Sachs symbol, right? And so the contract that I'm requesting from is my Goldman Sachs contract. And here's the query time. And let's see in the documentation what that means. So this query time is basically this end date time until which date we want to query the data. So the request end date and time should be formatted such as this, or an empty string indicates current present moment. So if I just submit an empty string here, then what I'm trying to retrieve is basically all the data for the past day until today. Right, so here we have the duration. So this is basically requesting for one entire month. So we're requesting for one entire month until today. The bar size setting is 1 day, so we're here requesting daily chart from TWS. And what we can choose from is the type of data that we want to see. And so we can, for example, request midpoint, which is the candle midpoint between bid and ask. You can also, for example, request just the bid prices. So this would be the bid candles. You can also request ask candles. And you can also, for example, request trades, right? So the latest transactions on that candle. But let's just use the midpoint. And then we have some other parameters such as use regular trading hours, in which format we want to date. And then, for example, we want to keep up to date. So keep up to date if we want to stream real-time candlesticks, right? So if we want to receive live updates, we want to set this to true, right? And then chart options, I don't know what that means. Probably if you just check documentation here. So this is some tag value for internal use. So not sure what that means, but we will not be requiring that. Okay, so basically let's just run this and see how we can retrieve the historical data. So in order to retrieve the historical data, what we have to do is we have to scroll a bit down and we look for the e-wrapper function that will handle the the data processing of historical data, right? So here we see the historical data that you can just, copy that. We'll print out the historical data. But again, what I'm going to do again is I'm just going to use my class here and show you how I implemented it for myself. So if we scroll up here inside our TWS client class, here what we have is two things. We have historical data that will send the data initially, and we have historical data update that will update for new things, right? And then we have historical data end that will give us an event when we've received the last row of our OHLC data frame. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy this code into my trading bot file here. And again, we are just adding another callback function in our TradeUp class. So slowly but surely, we are building this class. And here we will have to do some slight modifications. And actually, what I prefer doing is let's first just copy the thing here from TWS client so I can sorry for confusion. So if I run the script, right, we should then see the prints from this section here. So let's just see that all prints are disabled and run the script again. So we're looking at this line here, right? Let's see what happens when we run this line. What data do we get from TWS? So now what you see here is that after running this line here, we get all the data for historical data, and you will find open, high, low, close. And also the volume, right? If you, for example, request trades, you will get the volume. And I think WAP is the weighted average price, for example. So now how do we convert this into like something that we can work with, right? So let's say I want to convert these lines into a pandas data frame. So what you can do, for example, here is that when we look at our trade app, so here already we create our market data dictionary. What I can do here is I can create some historical data, and let's say I want to save this inside the pandas data frame, right? So self.ohlc df, and ohlc stands for open, high, low, close, is equal to pandas.data frame. And the columns I will want to save to use the open, high, low, close data here would be I will save the open, the high, the low, the close, and also volume is also important if you like to work with volume, right? So basically these values here. So now if we now go lower, so we have this OHLC DF here. And the same way we save data in our update portfolio, the same way we will save the OHLC data inside the OHLC data frame, right? So now we scroll down in our historical data section. So now instead of saving into portfolio DF, we are saving inside the OHLC DF. And what you can see here is that what this bar returns is, for example, the time. So that would be bar.date. And then we would save the output inside the list again and again. What are we saving, right? Inside this data frame, we are saving open, high, low, close, volume. So let me copy that so we can see down here what we want to save. So we're saying open, high, low, close, volume. And so to reflect that, we are taking bar.open and we take bar high. Here we use bar low. Then we use bar dot close, and then here we say bar dot volume. So let me just run this to see if there is no error on my side. So hopefully there is no bug. And it seems that our script is working. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to print the historical data. So now let's go down here in my print section. And in this print section, let's add the historical data. So what I would do is like, maybe I would add the portfolio up here. The market data will be here. And so the last thing here is let's add the OHLC data. Let's add the OHLC data here. So here we would do OHLCDF. So every second we would be printing the current OHLC data frame, right? So what you see here now is that here's a print statement, and here we see the OHLC data, right? So here in the index, we have the date, right? And here we have the open, high, low, close, and the volume. So we see that it's working. Pardon? And so just to prove that I'm actually using the right data, right? Let's use this OHLC data frame and display the data using Plotly, for example, right? So I'm going to show you the Morgan Stanley daily chart for past 1 month, just so we can see that, you know, what I'm showing you actually is true. So here instead, so when you request the historical data, it takes some time to load the data, right? So here I'm going to add, let's say I'm gonna sleep 3 seconds, and I'm going to use Plotly to show you the historical data visualized. So I'm going to use OHLC figure or fig is equal to px.line. And here I'm just visualizing this data frame. So on the x-axis, we have the index, which is the date. And on the y-axis, let's plot the close price, right? So here we would then plot the close price. And then let me show you the figure here in my PyCharm IDE. So now, thankfully, my PyCharm, what it's doing is it is rendering this image inside my IDE. And here you see the figure on Goldman Sachs. So these are the historical OHLC prices on the daily chart. And I'm not sure if you can see that here, but there should be, to some extent, some resemblance between those charts, right? So this is the daily chart. And so let's look at that. So as you can see, here's like this little drop, where you can see this little drop, and then you see how the price increases. I think the drop is actually like this. Yes. So here's the drop, and then it does increase here. Also, if you want to use open, high, low, like the candlestick charts, plot does include it too, but I just wanted, you know, to double check if it's correct. So I just checked that we plotted the correct prices, which means we can now proceed to the next step, right? So now we're able to compute the historical prices. So now I don't need to display this again. And of course, I don't need to print this open, hello, close. Let's just, for example, just print the last value here. So we save some space during the printing. There's a question. Is there a way to contact you to ask a few questions? You get a follower. Yes, you can just send me an email at atjresearch.com, or you can join my Discord channel. I also, communicate with my members real time. So I'm just going to write my email for you so you can contact me later and we can discuss it via email. So yeah, I'll be looking forward to your email then. Great. So now I believe that we are done with requesting historical data. And now you see that we are almost like reaching the end of the live stream, right? So as you can see, coding for 1 or 2 hours can be a bit tiring, but if you think about it, coding a trading bot within 2 hours while explaining, all the details isn't actually that bad. Because once you learn the process, all you have to do is just copy some templates, change some settings, and it will be very fast. So like the tough part for me is that like I coded all those templates like maybe 1 year ago, right? So I still use the same templates this day. Sometimes I do some modifications. But when I like explain everything from beginning, from start, I feel like I get a little bit rusty. But it's a good thing, to actually, practice these things. So it's also like good for me to look at these things again, right? So almost the last task of today's live stream. How do we compute the Bollinger Band? Right, the Bollinger Band is an indicator, right, where you compute the simple moving average, where you compute the lower and upper band. And so those of you who've been watching my stream or my videos for a long time or have been, attending my courses, the Bollinger Band is actually very easy to compute. And because we already have a data frame, right? A data frame with our open, high, low, close, right? Here you see that we are saving OHSDF inside the data frame. What we can theoretically do is that whenever we get like a new bar update, we can just compute it inside the data frame that is currently available. So where it left off, yeah, right here. So remember, here we have the OHS data where we're actually plotting the open, high, low, close figure. So why don't we just, calculate the indicator here and then plot the indicator as well? So for example, here I can create a new column from my OHLC data frame, and let's compute the simple moving average, right? And so the compute the simple moving average, what we need to do is we just take the open price of the historical data, we apply a rolling window, and for example, if you want a simple moving average with period, let's say 10, right? So it's 10 candles, and we compute the average, we would just compute the mean, right? And then if you want to compute the standard deviation, right? The standard deviation is important, to compute the Bollinger Bands. So in this case, we would just compute the standard deviation. And then the next thing, so to compute the lower band and the upper band, right? So here, for example, the lower band would be our simple moving average, right? Minus our standard deviation. In this case, I'm just going to use 1 times the standard deviation. And so for the upper band, we're going to add like 1 standard deviation, right? So I'm doing in this loop. Later, I'm going to do it inside Trade App to compute it like real time when I receive a new data, a data event. But here I just wanted to quickly show you how we can display the Bollinger Band with literally 4 lines of code, right? So here on the y-axis, where I'm plotting all the things. So here you will have the trade app.ohlcdf close, and like what we can also do is we can just provide the name of the columns, right? So we don't have to do trade app.ohlcdf dot column. So here I will just plot the close price, the SMA. Actually, I'm gonna open the open prices. There's not much of a difference, but when it comes to backtesting, I don't like to use future data. That's why I use open. So here we do SMA, lower band, upper band, and let's show you the figure. So let's run this. And hopefully there should be no error. The figure should be generated. And so now what you see here is that I've computed the Bollinger Band, right? So here we have the historical price, the red line is the SMA, the green line is the lower band, and the purple line here is the upper band. And that will be the basis for our next live stream when I'll be coding a Bollinger Band trading bot on TWS. But today, because yeah, I think we might be stretching to 2 hours soon, I will just write a simple script that will buy and sell, and then next week we will code a mean reversion strategy using Bollinger Bands. So we'll just continue from where we're gonna end, and we're just going to build on top of it. So let me just change a few things, because computing Bollinger Bands in this while loop is actually, I would say, quite wrong, right? Because you don't want to compute the indicator every second. What you can do instead is you can compute the indicator up here. So whenever we finish processing our historical data, first I'm gonna put it here. This doesn't belong here. As I've mentioned, here in TWS, when you look at the API, here eWrap historical data returns all the bar data, right? How do we know when we have the latest bar data like event, right? When we're actually real time. So you can check that by going to historical data end. So this thing here tells us that we have all the data requested and that we're ready to compute the indicators. So here, when we go to historical data end, we can just wait for like the data input to end, and then we compute the indicators here. And here instead of trade app, we're referring to self, right? And now the indicators will be calculated once it ends, and then we will save some computation power in the section here. So then now if you run the script here and we don't need sleep anymore, right? Let's just add like maybe 3 seconds here for data to load, and maybe let me also run duration maybe for 3 months, right? Not 1 month, 3 months, so we can have more data to analyze. Well, actually, let me do 4 seconds or 5. There are also more like better ways to do it, but let's just say 5 seconds waiting time, and then we'll see what happens. Hey, love your content, but don't you think your models are too simple to generate real alpha? Yes, so let me stop that here. And I think that's a great question. Simple Bollinger Bands, simple moving averages are most likely not profitable on their own when you apply it to single assets. But the strategies that I deploy, right, I do statistical arbitrage. So what I do is I analyze the relationship between 2 or more symbols. And so you can apply a very simple model, such as a Bollinger Band, to 2 co-integrated assets that actually perform well for mean reversion trading, right? So the way I trade is not, I don't apply strategy to everything. I look where this Bollinger Band strategy works, and if it works on this like certain asset or simple pair, then this is actually enough to generate real alpha, right? So my approach in trading is I like simplicity in things. So either trend following strategies using SMA crossovers, mean reversion strategies using Bollinger Bands, and it's all about like the selection of assets. And like as you've seen, I've done like some linear regressions, co-integration testing, and seeing if these assets like work together. Well, that's my general answer to the question. So hopefully that helped. So what I'm showing you right now, right? Don't assume that this what I'm doing here is like profitable, right? We are not designing strategies today. All I'm teaching today is working with TWS API and how to create a trading bot. User, good evening too. Thanks for the stream. Yeah, glad to have you here too. And thanks for joining. Okay. So yeah, I ran a train bot. So what I did is I tried to compute the indicator. And by the way, I've noticed that my microphone is working right now. So thank God. But I definitely have to check that. So here's the historical data on the, oh, now it's generating that in a loop, right? We don't want that. So I just wanted to visualize that for you, how the Bollinger Bands look. But now we're just gonna work with it computationally. So I'm going to delete this. So we don't need the figures anymore. I just wanted to show you what the historical data looks on the chart. And so basically this marks the, this task as done. And now before we finish today's live stream, and maybe we can also have like a quick Q&A session, let's create a very simple trading bot that will open and then close the trade, right? And I think we did quite a good job today in like doing our own implementation of our trading bot. And that part will be very easy because in TWS, if we go to orders and we go down to place order, here you will find a very simple thing to place an order. If you look at it, so what I'm going to do now is, instead of working on this file, I'm going to show example how to send orders in using TWS API, right? So here I'm going to copy what I have in the train bot here, right? So we're just going to copy what you here. But instead of running a while loop and reading data, what we're going to do is, just 1 second. What we're going to do is we're going to buy 100 stocks on Goldman Sachs. Then we're gonna wait 5 seconds. And then we're going to sell 100 stocks on Goldman Sachs. That's it. So there's not much like we have to do. In that case, like, if you look at this trade app, we don't need these callbacks functions, but they'll be like necessary once you do train bot, because with train bot, we need to get the market data, analyze that, and then apply risk management settings such as monitoring, balance, equity, and all those risk management settings will be part of our future live streams. But for this like train bot example, I'm just going to delete it because we don't actually need it, right? Okay, so let's say I want to buy 100 stocks on Goldman Sachs. So now all we have to do is use place order. And now we have to provide 3 things in place order. One is we have to provide the order ID. That can be like a number we choose, but order IDs in TWS must be unique, right? So for example, if I set order ID to 1 now, right? If I send another order using 1, it will not work. And I'm going to show an example later why it will not work, but let's just set it to 1 here. then you need to provide a contract, right? Because we want to trade the Goldman Sachs contract, we have that here, right? So here we've defined the Goldman Sachs contract, so we have to provide that contract here. And then we have to also provide an order object, right? So this order contains all the details, what type of order that is. Is it a market order? Is it a limit order? How much volume? Is it buy, sell, the time in force? And all those details you will find in place order here. And so the order object, let's see where I can find the order object here. So here you can see the order object has things such as action, AUX price, right? If you're using stop limit orders and so on. The limit price if you're using limit orders. Then the order type, right? So in our case, if we're using market orders, because we want to open the trade immediately. And then time in force, right? So do you want to cancel the order after some period until the end of the day? And then like how you want the orders to be filled, right? Is it going to be like a fill or kill or email or cancel? So all these specifications of the orders are defined using the order object. So let's define our market order is equal to order, right? And let's call it market order 1, right? Because the first order will be buy, and then the market order 2 will be sell. So here you see our main goal, and because we are trying to buy 100 stocks on Goldman Sachs, I'm going to add it in this block here. And again, so what do we have to provide in this order object? The action. Is it a buy or is it a sell? And here order 1 dot action is equal to buy, right? Because we want to buy. Then the second question of our, how much do we want to buy, right? So here's the quantity. And so we said that we want to buy 100 stocks. So here the total quantity is equal to 100. And yeah, and let's keep going. What else do we want to provide? I guess that's it. That's the market order. So for market order, we just do buy it and total quantity 100. And if there's any mistake, right, if you forget to provide anything, TWS will just let you know, right? Hey, this doesn't work. You forgot to provide this, and then you can just fix that. So this is our market order. And I think this is it, right? So now, if you look at this, right now, our position on Goldman Sachs is 0. So now I'm gonna split the screen to show you the data on TWS. And so now what should happen is that once I place the order, I should see plus like long 100 stocks on Goldman Sachs. And like I'm not working with TradingBot anymore. I'm now using this send order Python file. And let's see what happens if I run this now. So send orders. So we're buying 100 lots. So now we're connecting, right? Same procedure. Then we're waiting. And then what you see here is error, invalid order type was entered. So let's see where this went wrong. So order type is that we forgot to provide what type of order that is, right? Because as I said, you also need to provide the order type here, whether it's a market, limit, or stop. So that's what I forgot. And so here the order type is market, right? MKT. If you want to do limit, it's LMT. If you want to do stop order, it's a STP. And let's try again. So here's my TWS account. And now we have another error. And this is fine, right? We all make mistakes. So as I've mentioned, the order ID is 1, and you can't have a duplicate order ID because in the past I've already entered 1. And so how do you get the next order ID in sequence, right? I could put 1 million there, right? That could work. So what TWS does has implemented, and I have that implemented in my TWS client class, is that if you go down here, here is this function get next valid ID, right? And the next valid ID will return the next order ID that's actually legitimate. So here I'm going to copy this code block here in my sent orders. And before I submit this trade, let's just see what this does, right? So here I'm going to comment out the place order. So right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to print so the next valid order ID is trade app.get next valid ID. So that way I know which order ID is valid. So I'm going to print and now let's run this. So I'm restarting this. And now we see that the next valid order ID is 218. So what that means is that on this demo account that I've been using, I've already placed 270 trades. So I have order IDs ranging from 1 to 217. And this is a very nice way to like identify and map your trades. And this guarantees that you cannot place two same orders at the same time, right? Imagine you create an infinite loop and then accidentally it'll open 100 or 1,000 trades accidentally. That is also a good way to protect yourself from placing the same trades same time. So now I'm going to uncomment this, and instead of using this order ID here, I'm just going to use the next valid. And now hopefully that will now open a trade. So again, we're buying 100 stocks on Goldman Sachs. So let's restart. And now you see that we have placed this trade, and now we have opened 100 stocks on Goldman Sachs. So that is great. You see that the order is partially filled. So what IBKR does, it can partially fill orders, but in the end, we wanted 100 stocks on Goldman Sachs. So now the question is, how do we close the trade? And it's actually very simple. All we do is we just reverse it and we are done. So for example, if we want to close that trade, so I will comment this out, right? And I will create a second order that will close the position. So here if you want to close the position, let's say, let's call this market order 2, for example, right? All we do is we just provide a sell instead of buy, and then we submit the order, right? And then of course, when we submit this second market order, we need to get another next valid order ID, right? So we can again add that here. So now this is commented out. So now what it should do is it should just sell 100. And I made a mistake. Now I have 200 open, and that is because I did not change the market order, right? It should be market order 2, right? This market order 2 is a sell. So let me run this again. Now I should close 100 stocks, right? And if I run this again, it should be at 0. So we got a partial fill. I'm still waiting for a fill of the entire position. As you can see, like, yeah, IBKR doesn't execute everything bulk. So you can get like partial fills during your market order. And now we're at 0. So now let's just put it all together, right? So what's our task? What's our last task? Our last task is run a training bot that will open close trades after some delay. So finally, we're almost at the end of today's live stream. So what we're going to do is we're going to buy 100 stocks on Goldman Sachs. We're going to wait 5 seconds. And then we're going to close the position. And that's all. So right now, we're at 0. And let's run this. So now we're placing a market order. Now we're 100, and now it is. Oh, so by the way, this is actually something that can happen actually, right? So what happened during this time is like I placed a market order, but my market order wasn't filled instantly, right? It was like still trying to fill, and while I was trying to get 100 stocks on Goldman Sachs, right, I then submitted a sell order, and it started to close and buy at the same time. And here I got a warning: your order was repriced so as not to cross a late resting order. So maybe what I should do is maybe wait 10 seconds, wait until the order gets filled, or you can just, write a script that checks until the order gets filled. That's also possible. But here we're gonna wait 10 seconds. Hopefully we'll get a fill, and then we can exit the position after the initial first order is filled. Okay, so now we're at 100. We're sleeping 10 seconds. So after 10 seconds, hopefully we'll exit the position. And now we successfully exited the position. So yeah, that's great. Amazing. So I'm very happy that we actually got through this. So it's been already almost 2 hours. So I guess you guys might also be tired from listening to me. But let's slowly wrap this up. So today what we managed to do is we extracted account data from TWS platform. We got portfolio data. We requested real-time market data, historical data. We computed Bollinger Bands on those historical data. And then we ran a simple trading bot that opens and closes trades. I think that's actually a lot of things or a lot of information for you to absorb. But that is the foundation for us to next week code a trading bot that will trade a mean reversion using Bollinger Bands, because all the prerequisites are already done. And then after that, maybe in the next slides we can handle both, right? I'm not sure how long it will take again, but either we'll do 2 trading bots or just this single one, and we'll see how much time we'll have next week. And so yeah, so this is great. And so as I've mentioned at the start of the stream, I will upload the code on my website and on my Discord for my members. If you have any questions, maybe you can just ask them now, so we can start a very short Q&A session. Or if you have any questions, send me a message on Discord or via email. Right? So that's basically it. So I'm gonna leave maybe a few minutes for some questions or general Q&A questions. If you want to ask anything independent or independent from today's topic. And other than that, yeah, I guess we can pack it today, and I'll get a beer. Yeah. All right, great guys. So it seems there are no questions, which is absolutely fine. So again, if you want to check out the code, yeah, feel free to study that. And next week we are going to continue with coding a trading bot using Bollinger Bands on TWS. And then, this is what I specialize in. We'll code a trading bot, which will trade statistical arbitrage, and we'll do like an implementation TWS. And then, like one of my members on Discord, he asked me to also provide something on the topic risk management. So how do you apply risk management rules such as maximum trades per day, maximum floating loss, maximum trades, and so on? Because so many things can go wrong, and if you don't have like a risk management algorithm that manages your trading bot, that can also be very dangerous. So this is also a very important topic. So we'll also talk about risk management. So thank you very much, guys, for joining today's live stream. I think I will be live streaming again around the same time. So it will be 6 p.m. next week on Wednesday. I will confirm the time again to make sure it's going to be next week. And I'll be happy to see you again in a week, right? So take care, guys.